Hi, I'm Josh Camacho from Zoom Assist, and welcome back to the MultiValue educational video series. In our previous video, Martin Phillips began to explain the differences between the SQL and MultiValue data models. In this video, Kevin King from Precision Solutions will explore the MultiValue databases themselves. We'll look into logging in and out, exploring the data in the database, and even exploring the definition of the data in dictionaries. We hope you enjoy this video.
Hi, my name's Kevin King and I'm the president of Precision Solutions in Longmont, Colorado. Today we're going to be talking about MultiValue query fundamentals. You may be coming from an environment with experience in MySQL or Postgres or Cassandra or Mongo or any number of databases that are out in the market today. But now you're looking at MultiValue and you're wondering, what can this do for me? So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at a number of areas like logging in, logging out, what you can do in the query language, how do you put some information in, and how do you get it back out. So we're going to start our discussion today by talking about something called TCL, the Terminal Control Language. The TCL shell is like the command shell on Windows or the bash shell on Linux or the SH on Unix in that it's used to run a command and produce a result. However, it's actually more like MySQL for the MySQL database or PSQL for Postgres or maybe SSMS for Microsoft SQL Server, and that this is what gives you the access to the awesome power that's inside of the MultiValue environment, which includes putting information in and getting information out. But here's a bonus. With MultiValue, you also write your programs and run your programs from inside of the environment. Not many other platforms do that kind of thing. So in MultiValue, one file has two parts. In some SQL databases, you have what's called the metadata or the schema that describes what the data looks like. In MultiValue, each file contains its own metadata that describes what that particular file looks like, and that's called a dictionary file, as we see over here at the bottom of this first slide. Now the dictionary file simply describes the data, that's all it does. And then you have the data file, which actually contains the data that you're working with, whether it's customers or orders or purchases or whatever it happens to be. So as we look at the query language, each query language command basically follows the same structure. It starts with a command, which we'll look at what those commands are here momentarily, followed by the name of a file that you want to work with, such as your customer file or your order file. Following that file name is a series of additional things, such as a with clause to restrict the records that you want to include, or a by clause, which allows you to sort the data in any way that you want. It can also be a list of fields that describes what you want to see out of the data that you're working with. Or it could be additional options like summary, suppressing details, suppressing identifiers. There's any number of things that you can do with these options. Now, this may seem a little overwhelming at the beginning, but you'll find that it's very, very simple. So let's look at a couple of commands. For example, here's a list command out of the customer file that says with state equal to CA. Now this is going to restrict the output to only show customers that are in California. Now following the CA, you'll see name and city, and these are the two fields that I want to see. So when this outputs, what I'm going to see is each individual customer's identifier, plus I'm going to see their name and the city that they live in. Let's look at another example. In this one, instead of the list command, I'm using the sort command. Well, here's a little secret. The list and sort command are actually the same command. You can use one or the other almost interchangeably. In fact, the difference is so small, most people use list for everything. But we can use the sort command and sort our order file, but this time we're going to sort by a field called ord.date. Now fields in MultiValue are called dictionaries, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. Following our sort by ord date, we're also going to show the cust num and the cust description. And these are field names that tell what I want to see. So the output of this would be the order identifiers, the customer numbers, and the customer descriptions. Now you'll notice I don't have a with clause on here, so it's going to show everything. One of the interesting things about working with the query language in MultiValue is that these things after the file name can appear in any order. You can put the field names to show first, followed by the by clause of how you want the information to be sorted, followed by the with clause. Or maybe you like the with clause first, followed by the by clause, followed by the fields, followed by the options. Really, it can come in almost any order, and the command line figures it all out beautifully. So you don't have to think about, do I have to put this before that or that before this? It just happens automatically. Today what we're going to be using is a CentOS machine running Unidata, QM, and JBase. We're going to look at all three of them because there are similarities between all of them, and yet there are a little bit of differences. So depending on the one that you're working with, you might have to do things a little bit differently. We're going to start today by looking at Unidata. And so what we want to do is we're going to first log into the system and get into our Unidata environment. So the first thing I'm going to do is enter my user ID, which in this case is my initials, followed by a password. And you'll always want to have a password because otherwise bad things happen. And this will log me in, and it will drop me at a colon prompt. And this colon prompt is this TCL that we were speaking about earlier, the terminal control language. This is where I get to put in commands to tell the environment what I want to do. So just as an example, one of the commands that I can use is called listf. This means list files, and it will show me all of the files that exist out here. Now this is one of these testing environments that I have, so there's a lot of stuff in here. Can't really tell you what's going to show up. Let's find out together, okay? So there's a whole lot of files that are in this thing, and it will show me the name of the file, it will show me the type of file that it is, and we're not going to get into file types today, but there are different types of files that you can have, and then some additional information about them. But listf is one of those important commands when you're first getting into a multi-value environment to understand what is it that I have out here? What can I do once I get here? Now, another one of those important commands is called listv. This is list verbs. Now, a verb is a command, like list or sort. And so as you look at this, you'll see that there are a lot of commands that you can do inside of the multi-value environment. For example, you can compile programs, you can write programs, you can create all sorts of cool stuff in here using these commands, these verbs that we can see with listv. And just by going through this list, I'm 7-8 pages into it, and I'm only halfway through the alphabet. So there are a lot of verbs that you have to choose from in building your multi-value application. Today, however, we want to focus on the query language. And to do that, I'm going to be using a file that I created called the customer file. And so I'm just going to say list customer, the simplest form of the list command, list followed by the file name. And it will show me the unique identifiers for each record that's in that file. Now, one thing Martin spoke about in an earlier video is that every record has a unique identifier. And in this case, the unique identifiers are numeric, but they don't have to be. They can be anything that you need for your particular application. Now, behind each of these unique identifiers is actual information, but because we didn't specifically ask for anything more than the unique identifiers, that's all we can see. So let me show you another enhancement to this command. We can say list customer, but instead of pressing return here, I'm going to say name and status. Now what I see is the name associated with each of these people and the status associated with each of these people. Now the status in this case merely represents whether a person is active in case the letter is A or inactive when the letter is I. So we can see we have 2 active customers in here and we have 3 inactive customers in here. Now maybe I want to sort these by the status so I can see them in proper order. I can say sort, or I really can even say list, customer by status, and now what do I want to see? I want to see the name and I want to see the status. So keep in mind I've got my command, my file name, I have the by clause, which is by field name, and then I have 2 fields that I want to see, name and status. So now I see these, but my status is actually showing 2 active people grouped together and then the 3 inactive people behind them. If I wanted to do this in reverse order, I simply do the same command again, except instead of saying by, I say by.dsnd, which means by descending status, showing the name and the status. And it gets to this point where I just can't type very well. So now we see the exact same information, simply in reverse order. So this is a primer on the basics of working with the query language. It starts with the command like list or sort, followed by a file name, followed by the fields that you want to see. But the question has to be asked, where did these field names come from? What makes name work? What makes status work? Well, the answer to that is something called a dictionary. Now you recall we said earlier that every file has both a dictionary and a data file, and the dictionary holds information that describes what the data is. Well, name just happens to be one of those records. So let me show you what I'm talking about. We're going to go in using the editor, which is a command called ed, or a verb called ed. And we'll say ed in the dictionary of my customer file. Notice I'm not just saying a file name, I'm saying go to the dictionary portion of it, and I want to bring up a record called name. Now here's a trick. The ed command is how you put everything into the MultiValue system. It's a command that's there all the time. It allows you to put anything anywhere, and it also makes it a very dangerous command. But we're going to use it today to look at this dictionary. So as you look at this, you'll see that I have 6 fields in here, what we in MultiValue call attributes, and each of these attributes has a specific purpose. Let me explain what the purpose of these are. Attribute 1 has a D in it, and that says that this is a data element. It means it is an actual physical element in the record. Now there are 2 types of fields. There are data fields, and then there are calculated fields, also known as iDescriptors and virtual fields. We're not going to talk too much about that today, but just know that there are 2 different kinds of fields. The second attribute in here has a 1. That 1 says that this is actually attribute 1 of the record. Now you may recall from Martin's video that all of the information that's stored in the record is stored in a delimited string. So there is a position to absolutely everything. Position 1, position 2, position 3, and so on. In this case, we're saying that name is position 1 in the record. Attribute 3 is blank. We're not going to talk about what that does yet, but we'll get there. Attribute 4 says name. This is the column heading that I want to show up above the column when I'm outputting this information. Attribute 5 says 30L, which says this is a 30-character field when it's showing on in a listing command, and it's going to be left justified. If I want to make this right justified, I simply change the L to an R. Simple. And then attribute 6 is an S, which says this is a single valued field. MultiValue records can store one value, multiple values called multi-values, or multiple lists of multiple values called subvalues. Martin talked about this in the earlier video, but this is going to be a single valued field. Only one value will be shown here. There are actually a couple different ways that a dictionary can be expressed in a MultiValue platform. What we're using right now is a product called Unidata. Now what we're going to do real quick is we're going to switch over to a product called QM from Zoomasys, and I'll show you how you can do the same thing with a slightly different format of dictionary. Now be aware, we're changing the database here. We're working in an entirely new environment, but it's going to look very much the same. So let me jump over to QM here, and I'm just going to say list customer, just as I did before, and we can see that I have some customers here. If I say list customer name, then I can see the names that are associated to the customers that are in QM. But if I go look at the dictionary for customer, looking at the status field it doesn't exist yet. So let's create this. I'm going to create what's called an attribute. It's going to be pointing to attribute number 7. The third attribute is going to be the name, which will be called status. Attribute 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are blank. I'm going to put a dot there simply so that I can proceed forward. And then it's going to be left justified 1 character. So now we'll go back to attribute 4, and I'm just going to replace the dots with spaces. Well, nothing actually. I'm really sucking at this part. Okay. So this is another example of what a dictionary would look like, where you have a in attribute 1, not a letter D, and then the format of the entire record has changed. But if I list my customer file and show status, it works exactly the same way. This is one of the beauties of working in MultiValue, in that you can have different formats of things, but they all mean the same thing. And the different platforms will support this differently. Let's take a look at what this looks like on JBase, also from ZoomAssist. On JBase, there is no TCL shell. You actually do it right from the operating system level inside of your machine. So again, we're on a CentOS machine running JBase, and I can simply, at the command line, say list customer, and I can see my customer IDs, or list customer, well, I have to spell it right, list customer status and name, and I can see the status codes and the name, and I do this all from within the shell environment in Linux. There is no TCL. That's the magic of JBase. I can do everything that I can do in the other platforms as well, such as I can edit the dictionary of my customer file and look at status, and I can see that this actually has the letter S, which is called a synonym in attribute 1, still pointing to attribute 7, left justified, 1 character long. So by setting up this metadata, by setting up these dictionary records, we feed the query language whatever we want to feed it. And that's the great part, because we can put anything we want in these records and we can describe them any way that we want. And if we do it wrong, we can simply change it. In some SQL environments, if you make a mistake like that, you kind of have to start over. It can get really difficult to modify things. In this environment, you make a small mistake, go back and fix it. It's okay. That's normal. That's MultiValue. Now there's more that the query language can do. Whether you're working with Unidata, Universe, QM, JBase, any of these platforms, there's way more that the query language can do. But our goal today is just to give you a taste so you can get in and get back out. So let's talk about getting out, and then we'll be done. Let's go back to Unidata. When you want to get out of a Unidata environment, you type in LO, which means log off. And this will terminate the session and return you back to the underlying operating system. In QM, if you want to log off, you simply say the word off. And again, you return back to the underlying operating system. In JBase, you're already in the operating system, so really all you have to do is Control D and log off, and you're out of there. Now I was running JBase from inside of another environment. That's a trick right there, but don't worry about that. When you're done, you simply Control D in the Linux system and you log off, and you're done playing with MultiValue for today. So today we've looked at how to log into the MultiValue system, how to log out of the MultiValue system. We talked about TCL. We looked at some commands like list and sort, list F and list V. So you've got a little bit of a flavor of what the MultiValue system can do, but it can do so much more. And you're going to find out when you watch some of the videos following this one. So on behalf of ZoomAssist, my name is Kevin King. Thanks for watching.
Thanks to Kevin King, we've received a glimpse into Unidata, JBase, and OpenQM TCLs. We've seen how to log in and out of those systems. We've seen what's in our MultiValue system with list F and list V. We've seen our data on screen using list and sort commands, and we've been introduced to the MultiValue dictionaries, which define the structure of our data files. At the end of this video, you'll find links to download trial versions of all the software that Kevin demonstrated. And if you're interested in MultiValue, be sure to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Josh Camacho. Thanks for watching.